Hello, everyone. This is our redux of our best villains list. Similar to our female characters list, we've now seen a lot more anime, a lot more great villains, and have a stronger list with less holes in it and a renewed perspective on what makes a great villain. So we wanted to go through those and share our thoughts with all y'all.
This is definitely the list that you're going to have a little more perspective on than I will, because you've seen a couple more great villains, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple more great villains that you haven't seen. I think I also just tend to watch shows that have more fighting involved, more direct conflict rather than personal reflection and psychology,
Fair.
interpersonal drama.
And I think that'll be reflected in the lists
Yeah.
in terms of who we're selecting.
Yep, absolutely.
So then, do you want to get started?
Let's
Get
kick it
right
off.
in?
Yep,
All
let's kick it
right.
off.
On to number 10.
Cool. So number.
By the way,
Yep.
your lists are on the right and mine are on the left.
Yes, Mark's list on the right, Scott's on the left. So number 10, I have Yoshikage Kira. Kira is probably my favorite character in the JoJo anime. I really appreciate his presence. I think anytime he's on screen, he's pretty breathtaking and keeps me on the edge of my seat and everything he's doing. I love the serial killer psychology that you get with him. You see this weird drive to live this normal life that's just so inaccessible for somebody who also lusts for killing in the weird sexual way that he does.
Oh, he's got a weird fetish.
He's got some fetish, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think the brutality of the moments he has with a lot of characters on screen, don't really want to spoil who they're with, creates this ominous cloud over the town that you've seen as this really happy, sort of fun place despite the stand users. But now you see this real threat to the town, and I think it's a tonal shift for the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think he works really well as that threat to the town, because
Yeah.
the town's really like the main character of Part 4.
Yeah, it is.
So,
and the
him.
town of Morio is really like almost the best character
Yeah.
in JoJo to an extent. And then, yeah, Kira is just pretty great in every way. I think he's not really a surprise for anybody seeing this list.
No, I think everyone expected Kira here. I also think he's just wonderfully weird in this JoJo way.
Yeah.
You know?
He is weird.
He's
he
a
meshes
weird
well
dude.
with the cast. I think the parallels between him and Josuke are really good too, especially reflected in their stands, where you see Kira, who is a stand that can destroy anything, blow it up to nothingness, versus Josuke, who can repair anything to its original form.
Yeah.
They're direct opposites, and it works really well in the fight that you get to see with them at the end.
I think
Spoiler, the main hero fights the main villain.
Whoa. Yeah, but I think it also works like reflecting their effects on the town, where like, Josuke kind of links together a bunch of different groups and he's bringing them together versus Kira, who's sort of tearing everything apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only problem with Kira is I wish that we got more of him and his wife.
Yeah, I was about to say some
that,
of my negatives with Kira. I wish we got to see more of him and his wife and the sort of budding feelings he was having for her, where it seemed like he actually did care about her. He was holding himself back from doing things to her, not just to avoid getting caught, but because he seemed to feel something for her. I also would have liked to just see more of his past or his development or see more of a progression path for him, like some of the other villains higher up on the list. But in terms of being just a cool villain with a great aesthetic and a lot of epic moments, he's fantastic. And
just like the presentation of him is fantastic. And that's really where I think he gains a lot of...
Yeah. So let's hear your number 10, Scott.
My number 10 is the Anti-Spiral from Gurren Lagann.
Super sick.
He was on our old list, and I still think he's fantastic in terms of just, like, how he contrasts the general tone of Gurren Lagann, because he's sort of like this cold, more logical
He's so inhuman.
Yeah, whereas Gurren Lagann is, like, power the human spirit, kick logic to the curb, and I think he just worked really well in terms of opposing everything Gurren Lagann stands for, and then at the same time, he's just a threat. Such a threat in terms of his power.
Yeah, he's...
You know?
Very easily the strongest villain on this list.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm like thinking like.
By the end, they're hurling galaxies at each other like frisbees. So he's pretty fucking
I
strong.
mean, that fight's just amazing. So
That fight
he
is
definitely-
incredible. Yeah,
He definitely gains a little bit of a spot from.
definitely
that.
one of the better fights of the villains on this list too.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
is very true.
Not the best, but
Yeah,
one of the better
and
ones.
I think just sort of what he represents and like watching them overcome that
Sure.
just works really well for him.
Yeah. Totally
And
agree.
that's-
I think he's a very solid 10 pick.
I also love his character design, even though it's really basic.
It is really basic, but it fits well for what he's trying to represent with this
Yeah.
just blackness of humanity.
Yeah. Love the anti-spiral. And
In Spiral, great.
That's about all I have to say for that.
Cool.
So you want to go
Let's
to
keep
number 9?
going. So you're number 9. So I'll start again, I guess.
All right.
I'll start because we don't have much more to say about Kira. Since
Yeah, we don't have a ton
we
to say about
already
Kira.
covered
Yeah,
Kira. Okay.
He's my number 9. I do
think
like
we'll-
this character design better, which is my hot take about Kira.
Yeah, you're definitely a minority there.
Oh, I know.
but That's
even,
all right.
even though I'm such a Bowie fan, still prefer this character
Yeah, you
design.
prefer the one that's not based on David Bowie.
Oh.
I think that we have some overlap, so we'll just talk about the villains when they come up the first time.
Yeah.
And then you'll just see later that one of us appreciates them more.
Yeah.
So number 9, I have Askeladd from Vinland Saga. Scott hasn't seen Vinland Saga, so you don't have much input here.
I think I'm actually planning on starting it like next week.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a group watch with a couple other pages going.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm gonna, I think that starts next week. So I'll
cool.
be starting Vinland Saga.
Nice. Vinland Saga is really immediately interesting. I think by episode 4, you'll be pretty hooked. And it's entertaining throughout. It's definitely one of the shows that I think has the best combination of being consistently entertaining and also very good and well written. I like Vinland Saga a lot. But as for Askeladd, definitely my favorite character in Vinland Saga. Again, I've only watched the anime, I haven't read the manga, so anybody who's going to yell at me that Thorfinn is better, not in the anime, I guess I'll say.
Incredible.
I think that he facilitates the strength of the revenge narrative. That is this central piece of what Vinland Saga is. You really see it through him, whereas Thorfinn is very animalistic, and I think that's fitting for what the show's trying to accomplish, but you don't really get to see a lot of the psychology of it broken down through Thorfinn. You really see that through Askeladd as he understands Thorfinn's mentality, and the way he manipulates it is really interesting too. I think the presentation of his character, where he's almost like another protagonist, even though he is the core villain of the series. It's a strange relationship that I don't think I've seen in another anime, so that was really cool to see.
Well, I mean, when I was just like seeing you watch it, I thought it was really interesting, like, because you were pretty early on, and I saw Thorfinn fighting Askeladd, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this is really early for that. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh no, it happens like every episode. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
They fight pretty much every episode. The main villain and the main protagonist, they're hanging out for a pretty much the whole show.
I
So
mean, I feel
if
like
you're-
that's pretty weird and could
It
end
is
up
weird.
making for some.
I think it has a
interesting
lot of really
development.
good moments. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that the show is really sick. Askeladd has a really engaging and double-layered personality. You learn a lot more about him as the show progresses, and your perspective on him as a character definitely changes. He's a good example of character development through revelation. And instead of the character actually changing, it's changing what you understand about them, and therefore your perspective on what they're doing.
Sort of recontextualizing everything that comes before.
Yes, yeah, very
always
much
like stories like that.
recontextualizes stuffs. And then this is very apparent to everybody who's seen the show, but there is an amazing ending to the Vinland Saga anime, and Askeladd is very clearly in the spotlight, and it makes for probably one of the better anime episodes that I've seen, and one of the best endings. I can't really go into that too much without major spoiler territory, but yeah, Askeladd is fantastic through and through.
We still got to do our top episodes list.
Yeah, we will do that at some point. Probably would be better off in this format where we can talk about them and why we think they're so great.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
a lot of them aren't the standard picks that everyone expects to see.
Though a lot of them are the last episodes of shows, so we'll be
They
just spoiling
are, yeah.
things
Yeah, that
left
is
and
fair.
right.
Yeah.
But would the last episode of Vinland Saga place in your top 10 episodes? This is the question. I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah,
This
you are
wasn't
putting me on the
prepared.
spot. Yeah, probably not. Probably not in my top 10, but very likely in the top 15.
Okay.
I would say.
So still high praise.
Still high praise.
High
yeah.
praise.
Okay, so let's keep going.
All right,
Number
moving
8.
on to the number 8s.
I'll let you talk first if you're ready for it, just because I
Because you just
went on a little
spiel
rant
about
there.
Askeladd.
Yeah.
So I have Ogi Yoshino from the Monogatari series, and I think this is where our difference in opinions of what a
is a
villain,
villain,
is
yeah.
comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
And without getting into too much spoilers, Ogi sort of represents more of a psychological conflict than any sort of plot-driven
Conflict.
challenge to the protagonist.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that, though, and I feel like a villain should drive the development of the main character. I think a villain
and
should.
Ogi definitely does do that, and very well.
Oh yeah, and she is opposed to the main character
Yeah.
in several ways, challenges who he is, and forces development from him, and I think that is the mark of a great villain, and sort of how she occupies part of his mind, and I think I'll be talking about that with several other villains on this list.
Yeah.
Or if the protagonist is completely affected by them, that sort of makes a great villain to me.
Yeah.
I don't really care as much for the plot-driven villains, where they're
Sure.
just there constantly and
Their
throwing new
agenda
obstacles
is different.
to them.
Yeah.
Like Part 3 Dio
Part
is
3
not
Dio,
my
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
He's just throwing
Yeah.
random obstacles in their way. That doesn't really make a great villain to me.
Sure.
But some sort of psychological conflict and being a representation of that definitely pushes
Yeah.
my opinion on a villain, and I think Ogi does that fantastically well.
I would agree with you that Ogi does it very well. My difference in perspective and why I didn't include villains that I would put in this category of being a reflection of a character's self-conflict or inner turmoil, psychological issues, is that I don't necessarily see them as their own character with their own agency and agenda, as much as I see them as being more of an internal conflict. If I were to put some of the characters that I would want to put on here, like, let's say, God from Pun Pun, who, if I was going to include on this list, I would put pretty high. I think that they are more the character themselves, and if I'm going to include them, I would include someone like Shinji as his own worst villain, because
We're
he
gonna
really...
say alien villains later.
Yeah, which he really is in the series. So I wanted to just make a distinction there, and when I made my list, I chose villains that had villainous impact on the plot, were drivers of the plot through their actions, and opposed the character both psychologically as well as physically.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, there are a lot
And
of
that's-
villains like that on my
yeah,
list as well.
yeah.
But the psychological opposition is
Yeah.
what really makes them stand out in my mind.
Sure.
So
And I can understand that,
even if
especially
they
with
don't
her.
do as much for the plot, especially in a show like Monogatari, where like the plot doesn't really matter that much,
Fair.
it sort of just makes me respect Ogi as a villain quite a bit,
That is
and
fair.
not really care about her lack of impact on the plot.
Sure. Yeah. Especially for that series, I see how that makes sense. I don't have any problem with Ogi being here or that perspective. It's just not something that I personally agree with.
Fair, and that's why we have two different lists.
Yep. And therefore you get different choices, which is always good.
Yep.
So for my number 8, I have Shogo Makishima from Psycho Pass. I think that he's a villain that's probably on most lists of this sort.
I mean, he's fantastic.
He's
so.
fantastic. Everyone
sense.
loves him. He really is the driving force of that show, in my perspective. You have this dystopian society that you very quickly realize is full of all sorts of hypocrisy and just bugs in the system in the way that it forces people to live their lives in this walking on eggshells type of way to not trigger this insane Sybil system that depicts morality as some measurable code that it just isn't. And Makishima is gifted with being able to get around this in a way that I'm not going to fully explain, but he can get around this, and that allows him to show these hypocrisies in society. Most of what he's doing, while it is pretty clearly evil, since he is killing people mercilessly, is meant to show what's wrong with the society they live in, and therefore reflect on our own society and how we are similar to the world of Psycho-Pass in some ways.
I mean, I think he does that really well in terms of opposing that society, but then in different ways, I think, from a more plot-driven perspective, he opposes Kogami in quite an interesting way that really drives the plot of the show. And then I think he also opposes Akane in a really interesting way in terms of how...
Definitely.
Because he points out the problems with the society, but he doesn't exactly go about handling it the right way, as we were saying. He likes to kill people, and
He
I
likes
think
to
that
kill people and cause mass turmoil.
it pushes Akane into a direction of, is she going to figure out a better way to invoke change? And I think that was one of my disappointments with Psycho-Pass, and that the later seasons don't really do as well. And like, if they really got into that, I think it could have been great.
And that seems to be the perspective of most people, is that Psycho-Pass is a season 1 Marvel that doesn't really continue.
I did not like season 2 at all.
Which is why I haven't seen any more than season 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it, but Makishima does a fantastic job of opposing sort of the philosophical elements in terms of the society, but then he also
He's also just really fucking sick.
he has an interesting window into the mind of a psychopath, and then
Yeah.
his relationship to the society, where you get that later, definitely plays into a lot of this, and I think he's a fantastic character. I totally agree.
He is, yeah. And that's about all I have to say about him. So let's continue on. Number 7. So you will probably be doing more of the talking for both of these characters.
Hey!
Uh,
Well, I mean, you like
I do
my
like-
pick more than I do, and
that is
I
fair.
like your pick more than
yes,
you do.
that is true.
But- Why can't I remember his name? Ozu.
on your list.
Ozu's
His name's
a-
memorable.
Fantastic. villain
Another
as well,
example
but
of psychological conflict being physically represented.
yeah, he's pretty similar to Ogi in that way. But what I really like about him in terms that separates him from Ogi and why I put him higher
Sure.
is the whole time he's just built. You really see into Watashi's mind, and he's just built as this like demonic figure.
Yeah.
You know, the whole time, just the way he's
Yeah.
presented in those sort of more psychological scenes.
Yeah, which is really just a build-up of how Watashi is seeing him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think seeing the spot he has in Watashi's mind, that like stranglehold of that part of him is really interesting, and that drives a lot of the conflict of the show. And so I guess it's not really him himself, as you sort of were saying, that he's not really a character with his own agency beyond a couple scenes.
I think he does a little bit more than some others that could be cast in this light.
that's fair. He
But-
does.
Do his own thing.
Yeah, he does impede on Watashi's rose-colored
Yes.
campus life
Yes.
in several ways.
Yes.
So I think he's a fantastic villain. And then, to be honest, I think the couple scenes with him in episode 11 is what
end
makes
of the
Tatami
show.
Galaxy stand out as a show to me.
That's reasonable. Yeah, I think that episodes 10 and 11 are really the defining moments of the show. It's pretty much all build up for
Yeah.
those moments.
I know, at least to me, I think episode 10 is sort of like where the show's going, and it's like, okay, it was done pretty well.
Yeah.
And then episode 11 is like, okay, here we're going to offer a unique perspective on this idea that we just covered.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and
I
then
can
how
understand
he
that.
plays into that is super interesting, and one of the main reasons I have him so high.
Fair. Yeah. Love Ozu. think that's a good pick.
Fair.
My number 7 pick, and I think you probably have him on here and higher than me, but again, seen more villains.
I think
so-
I don't think I've seen a ton of the characters that you have higher.
Yeah, I don't think you have seen a ton of the characters I have higher. There's definitely some that I have higher than him that you disagree with, but
Yeah.
it's probably only 1 or 2. But yeah, Kirei Kotomine from the Fate series. Kirei is fantastic in both Fate Zero and in Fate Stay Night. The way that he ideologically
Opposes the main two protagonists of those works.
is always really great. I think that in Heaven's Feel, when you get a bit more of his character,
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to go into that because that is sort of
That is in spoiler
territory.
Really, if you don't think this pick is justified, just wait till Heaven's Feel 3.
Yeah, just wait
because
till
that's
Heaven's Feel 3 and then
that's
you'll
just
be on board.
Everything that I have to say about Fate is just wait till Heaven's
Just
Feel
wait
3
till
and
Heaven's Feel 3,
it'll just
yeah.
make sense.
That is the problem, is we're talking about something that's not even out in the anime yet for
Yeah.
American audiences.
It is sort of a problem.
Yeah, but,
But-
even on the back of Fate Zero, I think that he'd be on a good amount of people's lists.
I think he's about tied with Makishima after Fate Zero, to be honest.
That's fair.
I
Yeah,
think
I'd
he
see that.
definitely sets himself apart from Makishima with Stay Night. But
Yeah.
just in Zero, still. Just
Yeah.
like that fight.
Yeah.
The Kuretsugu versus
The Kuretsugu
Kirei,
versus
and how
Kirei fight
the
is
ideological
fantastic.
conflict comes out through the physical.
Yeah, and just how well it's animated and
Yeah.
all of the heart-stopping moments that happen during it. It's just great to watch. That was definitely my favorite part of Fate Zero, was that fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you, now that you've gone through Heaven's Feel, and to anyone who will be going through Heaven's Feel totally soon,
Yes.
if you rewatch that last scene of Fate Zero where he's talking at the very end,
Yeah.
that puts a nice perspective on some of the things he was saying at the end of Heaven's Feel.
Okay.
You know how
Yeah.
those parts were a little confusing?
Yeah, they
If
are.
you watch Zero,
You'll
like
see
that
it.
last bit, it'll kind of make sense.
Interesting.
And then I think through Zero, if we're focusing on Zero,
Yep.
his conversations with Gilgamesh the whole time are pretty damn
They
interesting.
are really interesting. Gilgamesh always has a pretty cool perspective on things, even though he's kind of an arrogant prick.
See, if we're
Still love him, but
yeah, if we're talking about like presence more, like
Yeah.
we're talking about Kiro, like
Yeah.
his presence, like Gilgamesh's
Gilgamesh's
fantastic
presence is
He
awesome.
just doesn't.
Gilgamesh shows up, and you're like, "Oh, shit's going down."
Yeah, he just doesn't have that like opposing the protagonist thing that I
Yeah,
would've preferred.
he's just not that interesting in terms of his character themes or drives. Really, it's just he wants to be better than everybody.
Yeah.
That's essentially it.
So I definitely enjoy Kira much more in that.
Yeah, I would.
And
say
how he
that's
push,
better.
like how he pushes Shiro's development in Heaven's Feel is just
Yeah,
incredible.
it is great.
It's
It is
incredible.
great. Yep,
And
yep. Heaven's
if you don't
Feel
think he
is-
should be here, then wait till Heaven's Feel.
Wait until this feel. All right, let's keep going. So my number 6 pick is Utsuro from Gintama, and either you don't know who that is, or you shouldn't know who that is. If you've seen Gintama, I'm sure you have no problem with this pick and think he is a fantastic villain. Unfortunately, even showing an image of him or talking about him in any capacity would be huge spoilers for the Gintama series, and I really encourage nobody to look him up if you don't want Gintama spoiled for you. So I will leave it at that.
And then I have probably my most controversial pick on here.
Yep.
I have Netero from Hunter x Hunter.
Isaac Netero, an
Yep.
antagonist.
An antagonist. To me, Meruem is the protagonist of Chimera Ant. He's
Yeah, I think that from the way the show is portraying the conflict between the Hunter x Hunter cast that we've come to know and the Chimera Ants, they do show this sort of duality between who's in the right and who isn't. I think from a human perspective, which people seem to see it through, you do see Netero as the guy who's going to defeat this big evil that's coming to Earth. But if you look at it from an outsider's perspective, or really just try to qualify everything that's going on, Netero sort of is the evil one.
Yeah, and even if you don't look at it super objectively like that, which I definitely think is a good way to look at it and
Sure.
justifies what I'm saying, but even without that, I feel like with just everything with the rose to keep things vague,
to keep things vague.
he just represents, like, also,
The problems with humanity.
yeah, the problems with humanity. I
Yeah.
don't want to be offensive or anything, but, like, he is an old man in a position of power,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
So I think he just sort of represents, like, the establishment in a really interesting way, and just sort of the violence that it perpetrates.
Yeah.
And even...
Especially in his unwillingness to talk to Meruem.
Yeah.
Meruem doesn't want to fight him. I think they both know that in a direct confrontation, Meruem's going to win, but Meruem doesn't want to fight. He wants to talk things out and understand his perspective.
Yeah,
Which I
and-
thought was really interesting, and I wish that they did sit down and talk a little more.
Oh, I think that conversation would have been fantastic,
Yeah.
but I feel like Netero's refusal to do that makes him more of a villain and really does represent how the establishment interacts with the rest of the society, just in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Even stuff that, like, Gon's going through, I feel like Netero really represents.
Yeah, he does.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I have a weird take on the Chimera arc and view it much more about, like, a dark take on maturity and, like,
Sure.
getting there. It's a dark coming-of-age story to me.
Okay.
So I feel like Gon and Meruem both are sort of growing up and realizing that the world is much darker than it seems, and the
Yes.
goofy guy like Netero in the beginning is not as goofy and is much darker than we see.
Yes. Yeah, he
And
is
I-
not the guy who is playing keep away with a ball.
Yeah, and
As
I think
much as
that
you think
is,
he is.
presented extremely well, and I chose this image because, of course, I chose this image because this is the
Yes.
most terrifying image of him.
That's fair.
And I think that he portrays all of that fantastic. And in terms of plot, that fight's incredible.
That is
so if we're talking
incredible
about
fight.
if we're talking
That is
about plot, like, that
incredible
fight,
fight.
is amazing.
Yeah, that would be that one's rivaling the Kiritsugu Kure fight for
I take it over it.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I
fair.
prefer the better.
It would not be my pick for the best fight on this list. I will let you know when we get there, but
It's not my pick for the best fight on this list either.
that is also true.
Hey.
But
But that's about all I have to say about Netero. I'm sure we'll get some
Yeah.
controversial.
yeah, we'll get some controversial reception to that, but
But
that's all right.
well, Netero
Now
villain.
for
Now for the
top five. Let's do it. So speaking of Meruem,
You disagree with me on who's the villain here.
yes, I disagree with you on who's the villain. I think you would have included Meruem on your list and fairly high if you were counting him as a villain.
Yeah.
You don't have him on your list, do you?
I do not.
Okay.
I view a villain as someone who's sort of opposing the main character, causing change, and yeah, I think of Meruem as the main character, so I
Yes.
don't really view him as a villain.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of analyzing this from how well do they function as the villain, rather than how good of a character are they that is technically a villain.
Yeah.
If I were doing that, then I would have Meruem much higher.
Yeah, fair. And I probably going to fly through this slide because we've already covered a lot of it with Netero. But Meruem is that opposition force to what Netero is standing for. He's a villain in that he antagonizes humanity, which is what we're seeing the conflict in Chimera Ant from. But he really develops into understanding what is humanity. He grows to be more human than the humans that we're following. His statements on why is it okay for you guys to eat animals when I can't eat you, because he sees himself as being above humans, and humans to him are likened to animals, and there is merit to that. Maybe I wouldn't agree, but I can understand where he's coming from. I think that his fight with Netero, as we were saying, is absolutely fantastic. I really like how they incorporated what he was learning in his time with Komugi and their matches into the fight, where you see this really great animation sequence of him searching for this sort of needle in a haystack type of situation, where he can sneak in and get a hit in on Netero's nearly perfect defense. And speaking of Komugi, I adore their relationship. I think it's really impactful and was a really compelling way to show the growth of this character as he confronts, as the most powerful being in the world. He confronts what is essentially the weakest being in the world, a girl who's blind and can't really do anything physically.
Absolutely.
And they come to this understanding of each other and this sort of shared appreciation and love that is the driving force of Meruem's character in a lot of ways. And I thought that was fantastic, and I guess I can't really argue for him being this hateful, evil guy, especially by the end. And he did kill a lot of people, but...
I know tons of heroes who have killed a lot of people.
That is fair. But yeah, I think that most people just categorize him as an antagonist, so I put him on a list. I can't really argue for him being evil, especially by the end. But yeah, Meruem number 5. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
I don't
for
think
anyone.
that's going to be controversial at all.
Yeah,
Meruem's fantastic and well loved.
Fair. So let's keep going.
All
number
right.
4. All right. You want to kick us off, Scott?
I will kick us off with another character who is more so a representation of internal conflict.
Yes.
And I will go with Gendo Ikari from Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Scott picks Evangelion.
Whoa, who would have guessed? Gendo, to me, he also does have a little bit more plot.
He definitely does have more plot. Yeah,
he has more plot-driven.
Physical villain than
he is driving sort of the main mystery of the show. He's pushing Nerve towards the direction to go for his goals, but then also he is responsible for a lot of Shinji's problems in a much more what's it called, plot-driven way. You know,
Yep.
He isn't just an abstract concept or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's a person. He's his neglectful father. And that definitely pushes Shinji into the direction that he goes.
Yes.
But then also he does represent a lot of internal conflict in how some of the revelations you have about him in End of Evangelion and a lot of the parallels you draw between him and Shinji.
Yep.
Sort of representing like a darker path that Shinji could take.
Yeah.
And sort of wanting to avoid that.
Yeah.
But then also, we were talking about this with Ozu a little bit, I really love how they build him up in Shinji's mind, especially with his height.
Sure, the portrayal of him from a shot perspective.
Yes, because there are scenes with Gendo and like Misato, or Gendo and Kaji, or Gendo and Fuyutsuki, and he's not that tall.
Yeah.
But he's like twice Shinji's height in any scene with Shinji. He's like twice his height, especially the scenes in Shinji's mind, where it's like even more exaggerated.
Yeah, and he's always portrayed on a higher level than Shinji.
Yeah.
So, physically, he is on a higher platform than Shinji is standing on.
And I think that really reflects like how the place that he has in Shinji's mind and how it's just Shinji
as he feels
sort of
looked down on by him. Yeah.
And so I think that he represents that sort of force that's coming down on Shinji and keeping him down. Mm-hmm. And I think that is done very well.
That is fair. Yeah, Gendo is great. I can't really argue with that. Especially if you're going to use that perspective of viewing a villain. For my number 4 pick, I had a really hard time choosing between my 3 and 4. I've just been feeling my 3 guy more lately, so I went with him, but they are insanely close. I went with Takasugi. Takasugi is this very mysterious presence for most of Gintama. You see him as this clearly more endgame antagonist through the first season, which is half of the show. He's built up in the background. You don't know much about him. You know that he grew up very close with Gin and that they were friends at some point. You know there was some sort of conflict that happened, but you have no idea what it is. And much of this comes to light in episode 305 of Gintama, which is the best episode of Gintama and features the fight between Takasugi and Gin, which would be my pick for the best fight on this list.
Spoiler alert, the hero and villain fight?
Yeah, spoiler
You're
alert.
telling me that the protagonist fights the antagonist in a battle shonen?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they fight, and it is phenomenal. Spoilers for one of our coming lists, but this is the best fight in anime, in my opinion. Both visually and how evenly matched they are. They really show Takasugi as the complete parallel to Gin. They are evenly matched to a swing. Every time one of them is damaged, the other one is damaged equally. And the best part about this fight isn't even the action, which is flawless and very tense the entire time. It seems like either they're both going to die or something's going to happen to stop this fight. But the best part of the fight is the backstory that you get. Through this fight, you get scenes that explain a lot of the big pieces of information that we wanted throughout all of Gintama, and you learn everything about Takasugi. Within this one episode, he went from somebody that I saw as this mysterious villain I didn't really know much about in a cast of a lot of really great characters to being the clear-cut second best character in the show for me. His backstory, the way that he builds up this idea of Shoyo, his mentor, in his head, and what comes to light with him versus Gin and the conflict that happens between them is amazing. And my favorite part of the episode is this one line that I don't want to say because it's a spoiler, but the one line that Gin says to Takasugi where Takasugi immediately recognizes what Gin says and agrees, and that makes their fight even more intense. I think anyone who has seen the episode will know what I mean, but that was one of the best moments in Gintama and anime as a whole for me, and I love Takasugi. And speaking about him now, I kind of regret not putting him 3 because I don't know if I'm going to have this impassioned of a speech for my third pick, but that's all right. Yeah, love Takasugi to pieces. Kind of retroactively want to put him 3, but you guys could just think of it as a tie as you want to, or whatever.
Well, let's see your 3 pick then.
Let's see.
But before that, since I put you on the spot before, now does that episode make it?
Yes, that episode makes it. That was the top 10 anime episode for sure, no doubt.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think that pretty much everyone who has seen it would agree.
Fair enough.
Especially because you need 300 episodes of Gintama to get there. So
yeah, I mean, if you don't like the show,
you probably like the
not
show
gonna
if you
see
made
it
it to episode 305.
All right, then let's see what our 3 picks are.
Cool.
All right.
So these are interesting.
Yup.
So I chose... I'm going to go first because I think your 3 is going to bleed into the end a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So my 3 pick is Funny Valentine from Steel Ball Run. I adore Steel Ball Run. Steel Ball Run was something that I couldn't put down. It was actually only the second part of JoJo I read. I'm sure I'll get flamed for being a part skipper, but I had seen part 1. I knew a good amount of the mythos around JoJo's. I knew who Dio was. I knew Zawalda. But I went right into part 7. Yeah, I went into part 7, and I was really blown away. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I thought it was probably overrated just on what I had seen and known of JoJo. But there were a lot of people that I tend to agree with on anime who said that it is by far the best part. And I read it, and it was amazing. And I assumed that the rest of JoJo would probably be better than what people said too. And no, Steel Ball Run really is this standout in the series. Araki just... I don't know.
Took writing class?
He took some weird writing seminary or something, went off into the woods and just did DMT and stared at the stars. I don't know. But
this isn't the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah,
we can't talk about DMT on here.
Yeah, but Funny is phenomenal. I'm going to stop talking about the part, go into this character. Funny is phenomenal. He's pretty present throughout the series, which I really like in a villain, where they're not just this endgame threat like Dio is in part 3. You don't really see anything with Dio until the last 3 or 4 episodes, so it's hard to get a good read on his character, even though you got a lot of it in part 1. But Funny is present through a lot of the series, and what's really great about Funny is his ideology and what he represents. and especially how that intertwines with his stand, which makes D4C probably my favorite stand in JoJo. His ideology is nationalism. He is the embodiment of nationalism. He is the president of the United States. He became the president because of patriotic connection to his father, and he represents this to a T. He is nationalism incarnate. And the way that his stand works, where it hops around dimensions, and Valentine has no regrets by letting his ego die. He has no regrets in seeing the funny that he is die and not exist anymore, as long as he can switch it out for another funny that will take his place and keep his goals alive. And that is just psychologically jarring to me, that someone's able to do that in their position for a goal that they care about to that extent. Funny preaches about America being the pinnacle of the world, and that's the only thing he cares about, and he will do anything for it. All of Steel Ball Run focuses on finding this object, we'll say, that would allow America to do that, and that is all he cares about. He wants to be the one to take the napkin, as he says. He has this idea of the person who takes the napkin first at the dinner table is the one who sets the trends and everyone else follows. And he wants to make sure that him and America are the ones to do that. The way that he opposes Johnny and Gyro as the protagonists, and their fight is incredibly climactic. The final bargain scene that you see with Johnny and Funny, being vague intentionally here, was pretty overpowering. That would be one of my favorite anime fights, or I guess manga fights as well. And yeah, Funny is just unbelievable, and I love to have him at the 3 spot. And maybe I don't feel as passionate about Takasugi not being here after I just kind of ranted about Funny for a little bit.
Big Funny guy. I mean,
big Funny Valentine guy. He is without a doubt the best JoJo villain. I love Kira to pieces, but I don't understand how there's much conflict for him being the best JoJo villain.
Yeah, I just haven't read Part 7.
You haven't read Part 7. I don't know why I'm looking to you for affirmation. But
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny is the best.
Yeah, fair. Mm-hmm. And then your 3 pick.
My 3 pick.
Which is my 2 pick.
So
we can get into this here.
I'm just going to put it out there. I am on chapter 206.
Yeah.
I haven't seen everything with Griffith, so if you're criticizing me putting him below certain character, well, really you're only going to criticize me putting him below one certain character.
And they probably haven't seen the conclusion of that character.
That is true. But still, Griffith is fantastic. I absolutely love how he relates to his goals, but then sort of how I was talking about with, I really like a villain that challenges the protagonist. I think Guts, especially in the Golden Age arc, where he's sort of looking to Griffith for a goal.
Yes.
You know?
And then how Griffith shits on that when he unknowingly is within earshot of Guts, explains how he looks down on people who do that.
Yes, but how Griffith sort of like represents this goal in Guts' mind, and Guts like wants to be friends with him and is pursuing this relationship with him.
He wants them to pursue the goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is fantastically portrayed for someone who has nothing, like Guts at that point. But then after the Golden Age arc, when that thing happens, and completely recontextualizes Griffith
the sun gets blocked out.
Griffith as a representation of a goal,
yes.
And then how that impacts Guts' character in terms of how he relates to chasing that goal and questioning if chasing that goal is the right thing to do, and how that relates to his character, at least so far.
Yep.
If you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Is absolutely fantastic. I love Griffith.
Yeah.
And I love Guts' relationship to Griffith, especially in Golden Age, where you sort of see it a little more, but then Conviction, where it's contrasted
where
with
Griffith
his relation.
isn't there, but he's still top of mind in every panel because of how impactful the events at the end of Golden Age are.
Yeah, and that conflict between Guts' relationship with Griffith versus Guts' relationship with Casca, and
how he feels he needs to choose one.
Yeah, and how that relates to goals. And I think Griffith just really encapsulates like what a goal is in anime, and really challenges the idea of it. And I absolutely love this panel, because I was talking about how there was recontextualization at the end of the Golden Age arc, because the stuff before it really isn't different. and
Yeah.
but you don't see that, and
Yeah.
nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed.
You know?
Yeah, and that is sort of the epitome of Griffith's character, is that line.
And I absolutely love that panel, so
Yeah.
that's why I included that one.
Sure.
So then, since that's your number 2 pick, here's your
My panel
picture of Griffith.
Yeah.
And I think you just think he looks pretty.
Yeah, Griffith just looks really sick there. But, yeah, I love Griffith. I think that he is this portrayal of what your average American, per se, views as this hell-bent leader in society who will do anything and sacrifice anything, send any amount of troops to war to die for their goals, their money, their gain. He portrays that perfectly. I think that the internal monologue, abstract materialization of this in his mind during the eclipse is just overwhelming, where he wrestles with this idea of who is he, what does his dream mean to him versus his connections to other people. And in the decision-making process he goes through, it's just really jarring and sets him apart from a lot of other villains in my mind, where you see, I really like when a villain will showcase why they are who they are in a way that makes you see how they got there.
Yeah.
Maybe not emphasize, but I know there is the trend of Griffith did nothing wrong. I think there's one thing that Griffith very clearly did wrong that I don't condone in any way. But but other than that,
Disclaimer.
Yeah, he is sort of backed into a corner, and you can understand where he's coming from and a lot of the actions that he takes. And since Scott hasn't read past chapter 200 or so,
Yeah.
I'll touch a little bit on sections after that. You see in the Millennium Falcon, the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc, you see Griffith moving forward with his goal. You see him sort of achieve what he's wanted to achieve and where he's going from there. I think that the fights he gets into, the way that he runs a society is very fitting for Griffith. And the moment that you see, the big climactic moment, obviously, at the end of the Millennium Falcon arc with Ganishka, is incredible. I was reading and on the edge of my seat. I had to stand up because I was in so much hype for what happens with Griffith. And then the last few panels where you see...
I'm going to shut my ears real quick.
Yeah, where you see things take shape in his vision, if you will. Are just amazing. Griffith is incredible. It's actually scary to me that he's not number one, because I couldn't put him number one. I definitely think that the number one pick is the number one pick, but in most lists, compared to most villains, compared to most characters in media, in writing, he deserves extremely high placement in my eyes.
One more thing, and it sounds like this might change, but at least to this point, I really enjoy how generic his goal is.
Yeah.
Like, like the traditional definition of a MacGuffin where, like, the object doesn't matter and it's really just to see how people interact around it.
Yeah.
I feel like his goal kind of does that.
It does
his
kind of do
goal's
that.
so generic, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's
because
just
of
how
well
you,
it's done.
It's just how you relate to any goal.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I was touching
Yeah.
on earlier.
Where he's trying to do it, and he emphasizes in the Golden Age where his goal is almost built on just seeing who am I and how valuable am I? What do I mean to the world? Can I do this?
Yeah.
And he clearly can.
And I mean, I think that's a question that people do ask themselves.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
a relatable idea is
Yeah.
who am I? What value do I have to the world?
Yeah.
And in terms of how generic his goal is, that is sort of the thing that is built up as admirable.
Yeah, I think that it is one of the shocking parts of Griffith's character that he can be relatable at times, even though he really shouldn't be.
Oh, he's horrible, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think though that's a sign of a great villain when they're horrible.
Absolutely. But enough
relatable.
about Griffith. We can talk about how amazing he is all day, but your two pick, we've already talked about him, but that is Kirei Kotomine.
Yeah, I mean, if I put him so highly, just wait for Heaven's Feel 3. Like,
Yeah.
if you've read the visual novel, you just do agree that he should be this high.
Yeah.
So
I have no problem with him being that high after
He's-
reading the third section of Heaven's Feel.
he's just fantastic. And just how he pushes development in the protagonist and parallels and all of that and how
Yes.
that's revealed is
Yes.
absolutely incredible. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a good chance that Griffith will surpass him as I read more Berserk.
Sure.
But as of now, Kirei is incredible, and
Fair.
I couldn't put him lower.
Yeah, and minor spoiler warning, but I would say that the Kiritsugu fight is not his best moment as a character.
Oh, no.
So you have a better moment than that to look forward to.
Oh,
when you
yes.
see the new Heaven's Feel movie.
I feel like we should get sponsored by them with how much we
I know,
plug them.
honestly, we've
With
been
how much
plugging
we plug
Heaven's
them.
Feel for forever.
The whole page, I've just
Yeah.
been like, just wait till
Just wait till
just wait for
Heaven's Feel. Yeah.
It's gonna come out. It's gonna be amazing. You have to watch it.
Yeah.
Come on, please.
Yeah.
Ufotable, sponsor us.
Honestly,
Sponsor us.
Yeah, Ufotable. If anyone knows Ufotable, tell him to hit us up.
Tell him.
Yeah, him. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ufotable,
the one
guy.
person. The one person who's just drawing all day. All right, so then we're moving on to the number one pick, which
the number
will
one
come as
pick,
no
the best
surprise,
villain.
and we have as the same.
Yes.
Johann Liebert.
Johann Liebert, in my eyes, is the best villain in anime. Pretty clearly the best villain in probably just about anything.
He's incredible.
He is really incredible. We talk about a villain's main role is to challenge the protagonist, to be an opposing force to them, their ideology, their philosophy. And Johann does that perfectly.
Oh yeah.
At all times. Again, we talked about being top of mind, like for Griffith, being top of mind in the show, even when you're not on screen. And this is something that's really impressive about Johann. He's almost never on screen, but he's
in like 10 episodes.
Yeah, but he is the central focus of every moment in this show. Is
yeah.
Johann. Monster is a mystery, and Johann is the mystery.
And I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Kira, and how Kira has a fantastic presence, but like
Johann's presence is anytime he shows up on screen, you are alert.
Oh yeah, like, and how they really show how he can have the effect on people that he does in like episode 49.
Yeah,
is
because so much of media
incredible.
builds up these characters at this unattainable standard of manipulation, charisma, like psychopathy, evil, and it's never really it never really comes to fruition. It's never shown. You just have to buy it at their word.
Yeah.
But in episode 49, like you're saying, of Monster, we see Johann push a kid into hate,
into
nihilism.
his philosophy,
Yeah, into
and
his
how
philosophy.
he spreads his philosophy is absolutely
Is
fantastic.
through his charisma.
And you totally see that work, and you see him be successful,
Yeah.
and it is nuts.
It is nuts. He is just mind blowing at all points throughout Monster. He's the epitome of what a villain should be. And again, another point that we've been talking about throughout this podcast with being a good villain is seeing how they became a villain and why they have the perspective that they do. With Johann, we get that in a incredibly nuanced level. We know every detail of how he becomes this embodiment of nihilism, embodiment of anti-humanity that he is. Through the events with 511 Kinderheim, through his relationship with Anna, through the mansion, the Red Rose Mansion, everything that has happened to him, we know exactly who he is and why he is, and it makes the confrontations he gets into all the more impactful, leading up to the Ruinheim arc at the end, which is
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. The confrontation with Tenma, the overall end of Monster, and what that means. Johann is just, he's just pretty perfect as far as villains go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole ton to add. He is just fantastic, and how he spreads his philosophy, and how that relates to the show, how that relates to Tenma.
Yeah.
And just how he shakes Tenma to his absolute core.
Yeah.
Is fantastic.
Yeah, challenging somebody who values human life in a unique and refreshing way in terms of media, which really showcases that this man does value life. Monster puts an emphasis on people dying isn't a small thing. It's almost the opposite of Attack on Titan in that way. That's one of my complaints with especially early Attack on Titan.
Just people die, and it's like, oh no, Marco!
Yeah, oh no, character I don't know died. Number 83 this episode versus Monster, where one fairly unknown character dies and they make a big deal out of it, as they should.
Oh, it's weird watching, and I talked about this in my post on Tenma and on Monster, but it's just weird watching other shows right after Monster, because it's like people die all the time in action shows and they just skip over it. Whereas like when you watch Monster, it's like you care every single time.
Yep.
Every single time, which then makes Johann so much better as a serial killer, because
Yes.
it's like
because there's more weight on what he's doing.
like when he kills someone, you just feel it to your core.
Yeah.
It shakes you as much
Yeah.
as it shakes Tenma because of how Tenma influences your perspective on the show.
Yeah, and he never kills somebody in just a merciful, easy way. He never just shoots people for no reason.
Oh, he always just challenges them to their
he
core.
evaporates who they are as a person.
Yeah, and I think that is shown fantastically well, especially once you get to see his charisma a little bit more on display.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, and then it is ending the last few episodes and the sort of character development you see for him just as a man. I love the ending of Monster. Again, Monster is my favorite anime, so I can talk about it all day. But Johann Liebert, to nobody's surprise, and probably not that much dissent.
No,
is,
I don't think anyone's going to comment.
He's
Johann
the standard.
sucks.
Yeah, it's pretty much a coin flip if people are choosing Johann or Griffith for the number one spot on this list. But
So you had
for
the-
me, the answer is I had the Chad top two.
Oh, hey.
But for me, Johann Liebert is the best anime villain of all time.
Same here. I haven't seen anyone that really
Yeah.
comes all that close.
He's a perfect top for our list. He is a 10 out of 10 in every little villain category that we've gone through.
Absolutely.
And adore Johann to no end. So that's our top 10 villains. Hope you all enjoyed. This is end of our list. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.